Hey, this is Mike from the Run Testers, and this is our first run review of the Huawei Watch Buds. Here's what you need to know about the Huawei Watch Buds. It's priced at £449 in the UK with no pricing or details available as yet on a US launch. That makes it Huawei's most expensive smartwatch, putting it in more expensive than the Huawei Watch GT3 Pro and Watch 3. Design-wise, it comes in either matte silver or black case colours, partnered up with removable 22mm straps. You've got a 47mm size case, which measures in at 14.99mm thick, making it thicker than an Apple Watch Ultra for context. It weighs just over 66 grams with the case alone. The watch has an IPX7 water rating and an IPX4 when open, which means it's not suitable for swimming and immersing in water. There's a single crown button and a 1.43 inch 466 by 466 resolution AMOLED display, matching the display featured on the 46mm Huawei Watch GT3. The front of the case to open and release a case lid which reveals the bullet style earbuds. The buds can sit and charge on either side of the case and can be used in either ear. Huawei says the hinge can withstand over 100,000 openings and closings. Each bud weighs roughly 4 grams and offers active noise cancellation as well as an awareness mode, and there are touch and gesture controls to adjust listening modes, play and pause audio, handle calls and skip tracks, but it doesn't seem to support volume controls currently. Running features wise, you're getting most of what we've already seen on Huawei's most recent watches. There's profiles for outdoor and indoor running, as well as running courses and plans. You can set up interval training sessions and customize data fields, and you also have access to running insights like a running ability index, training load and recovery information. You can pair external heart rate monitors to it, sync data to Strava officially, but it does seem to lack route importing and the dual band GPS support that you do get on some other Huawei watches. Battery life is 3 days for both watch and earbuds together and 7 days in a power saving mode. The earbuds can deliver 4 hours of music with no ANC and 3 hours with ANC. So we do have to talk about design, because ultimately that is the real story here. The fact that Huawei has managed to create a watch that you can drop a pair of buds, or you can store away a pair of truly wireless earbuds. Now, my biggest concern with this watch was how thick was it going to be, because the idea of having a little compartment that you can store away kind of truly wireless earbuds, something's got to give in terms of that design. And actually, I'm surprised to find that it's actually not a really chunky watch. You know, I've kind of measured up against some other smartwatches, and actually you can see it's not really chunky. It is definitely a bit on the bigger side compared to some other kind of slimmer smartwatches that you can get. But actually, if you kind of look at what other watches around it around this price or a little bit more expensive, then actually it kind of sits pretty well. And you know, the size of it isn't something that massively bothered me. I think from a running perspective, obviously there are other Huawei watches that work a bit nicer for running. The Huawei Watch GT Runner is lighter. It's got a polymer case. This has got a metal case. You've noticed that weight a little bit, but it's, you know, ultimately it's been fine in terms of running with. Now, it's not a design that's kind of, you know, screams running. You know, you've got this kind of strap here that's kind of a more classic kind of watch strap. The case kind of conjures that kind of more traditional watch style kind of design, but ultimately it's been absolutely fine. I mean, you've only got one button here. You know, obviously, you know, on other Huawei watches you're getting kind of a couple of buttons, so you're really kind of relying on that touchscreen display in terms of that interaction. The touchscreen display, like a lot of the other Huawei watches, is very good. You know, vibrancy, brightness, the color kind of accuracy as well. It can stay always on during workouts as well, so if you want that option, you do have that option. Obviously that'll hit the battery life more. But yeah, I think the main thing for me is that I was worried about how thick and how heavy maybe this watch would be. That wasn't really a concern. It definitely isn't that kind of sporty feeling watch like something like the Huawei Watch GT Runner. I would say also some of the models of the Huawei Watch GT3 as well. In terms of embracing that kind of lid design when you kind of open it up to get those buds out, I think it works pretty nicely. Okay, so into the run test, and from a kind of run tracking experience, it's very similar to what I've experienced in other Huawei watches. You know, in terms of, you know, being on Harmony OS, that software, so it's a similar feel in terms of the UI and interface, similar kind of features. You know, the fact you can kind of create interval training on it. You've got similar kind of features in terms of the modes, the running modes. You've got the kind of running courses, which are quite useful for kind of beginners and getting to grips with running and tracking your runs. You've got some of the running metrics or more advanced running metrics from the kind of GT runner, which is kind of spread out to the other watches as well. So things like running ability index, recovery, advice, kind of training load as well. So kind of things that we've seen. I mean, it's things that you're mainly missing, well, as far as I can see, is you're not getting the dual band support that we've seen on the most recent Huawei watches, and I don't think you can import routes into the watch either, as far as I haven't been able to do it in my time with it. So it looks like maybe that's potentially missing from the Watch Buds. But in terms of the watch itself, in terms of the run tracking, it's been pretty solid overall. I've always found it pretty good on the Huawei watches in general, in terms of kind of distance tracking, those kind of average kind of things like pace and those kind of core running metrics and stats. It's held up pretty well. Heart rate monitoring has been okay as well. Kind of the steady runs that I've done, you do have the ability to pair external heart rate monitors, which is something Huawei has kind of rolled out on its most recent watches as well. So that is a good thing to see here too. As I said, you miss out on the dual band support from the looks of it, and I haven't seen massive differences in terms of what I've seen in the other watches that I've tested it against from that point of view. So from the kind of run tracking experience, it feels very familiar, or mostly the kind of things we've seen or seen supported on other Huawei watches from a run tracking experience. So from that point of view, I think it's pretty good. In terms of using those earbuds and how they work and how they, first of all, they've stayed put. They're very, very small, but actually they haven't budged in terms of my use. I've in the runs I've done indoor and outdoor runs with them now, and they've been relatively fine in terms of that fit. Sonically and how they sound pretty good. I mean, I think, the ANC's been very good when I've used them indoors. You're not best in class, but it is very good because you're getting a very kind of close seal. You do have some additional buds to make sure that fits is exactly right, but actually they do kind of disappear and they're very discreet in terms of wearing them. You do have the ability to change between kind of, as I said, the active noise cancellation and awareness modes. And you do have an EQ there that can change. You've got something better kind of suited for kind of voice, kind of added boost, something that's a bit more balanced. And you do have a variety or, scope to change how the buds sound. And for me, they sound very, very good. I think there's enough power there. I think there's a good level of bass. I think there's detail there as well. So from that point of view, I don't have, kind of many qualms. The controls, obviously you have a mix of kind of touch controls and these kind of gesture controls. I think they work okay. I think in terms of the double taps to kind of change between or play and pause or to accept a call, those work generally fine. You've really just got to make sure you're finding the sweet spot, and once you do find that, it's generally fine. The triple taps, I find it a little bit more challenging to do when you're running, and even on the kind of buds themselves, I think it's not fantastic. And you can customize those controls, but ultimately you can't control the volume, which I think is a little bit annoying. You can do it from the watch itself, and you've got some features on the watch to give you better control of their buds, but in terms of the onboard controls, as far as I see, you can't customize to use them for volume controls. But see, the controls are fine. I think not perfect for running, but I think ultimately they've worked generally okay. I think sound wise, it's very, very good. I'm very, very surprised that these kind of small buds deliver very, very good, well all-rounded audio performance, and ultimately they've stayed put for me in my runs, as I say, on a treadmill when I've gone outdoors running with them as well. So for me, all positives in terms of the run tracking experience so far, in terms of the performance of the earbuds as well, and in terms of using the earbuds and how they interact with the case and how the features and the software works between the two, I think work pretty well. The only other thing to mention really, battery life, I think it pretty much lives up in terms of that watch and earbud performance. In terms of the earbuds themselves, I would say maybe it's generous in terms of those battery estimates. I found that it dropped with ANC on, it dropped by 50% after half an hour. So, 25%, sorry, and then 50% for an hour. So not quite the 3 hours I think that Huawei kind of claims. So yeah, I think ANC off, you're probably going to get better performance. But generally, I think if you're using both regularly, it is kind of 3 days. You can go longer than that. You can go longer than that, potentially, if you're using the earbuds a little bit less and you're not charging them on a regular basis. One thing I will mention, the charging, when they have kind of run low and I put them back in the case, they do charge very, very quickly. Run tracking seems to be very similar in terms of the battery drop off of the GPS. It's kind of 3-4% off a half an hour run, so it's kind of what I expect or I've seen from other Huawei watches. So yeah, battery life, you are taking a bit of a hit in terms of that. With the ANC on, I don't think quite adds up to what Huawei claims, but in general it's been okay. It'd be okay for maybe an hour's worth of running. I don't think you're going to want to go further than that. I don't think they have the capacity to go further than that, particularly if you have ANC on when you're using them. And then we have to get into that compartment bit itself. So essentially you've got this one button here, you press, that opens up the lid here, basically the screen. You can pull it up and you've got the 2 earbuds in there. Now, another thing I was worried about was, are these buds initially going to just fly out during runs? Or if you've got you're out running, you decide you want to put your earbuds in and you open it up mid-run, is it going to be an issue in terms of doing that? And actually, I've given it a kind of good shake test in terms of kind of runs and pretty aggressively as well. And those buds kind of magnetically kind of do stay in place. So that is a positive thing, and that's something I was generally very worried about. The other thing you have to kind of sacrifice in terms of the design is the level of waterproofing. So the other Huawei watches are kind of waterproof in general up to kind of 50 meters. You can swim with it. You cannot swim with this watch, and ultimately you don't want to get it near water any kind of time possible, really. I have accidentally taken it in the shower. I'm just used to having my watches on, going showering, and they've been absolutely fine. When I've done that, it's kind of giving you a warning that it will know that the water is or it's been exposed to water. It will say you need to quickly kind of dry out the case. What I've had to do is I've opened up the case. I've managed to kind of dry down with like kind of a towel or some kind of tissue, and it's been fine. And I've done that a couple of times actually, and it's been fine in terms of operating after that. So yeah, that is a downfall, the fact that you're getting a lower waterproof rating, but ultimately because you've got that kind of design where ultimately the water can get into that pretty easily in comparison to a normal watch, and that's something that you're going to have to ultimately sacrifice. But in terms of that kind of design, the case design, the way that the earbuds kind of store away, it's been absolutely fine. It doesn't add massive amount of thickness, which is something I was massively concerned of. And yeah, it feels like a Huawei watch in most ways. It's not very sporty looking, but you can change the strap out and put something more sporty on it if you want, and you've got a nice kind of well-built watch here. It feels in line with the Huawei watches we've seen so far. So yeah, design-wise, not my cup of tea in terms of looks, but I think you can make it feel a little bit more running friendly in terms of changing the straps. You've got a great screen, and the kind of design, and in terms of adding that compartment, has worked generally in my kind of initial runs with it, and the buds haven't fallen out of the case at any point either. So initial thoughts on the Huawei Watch Buds is that, I think initially I thought this was very much going to be a big gimmick, and is it kind of design or smartwatch design that for smartwatch design's sake? But I've kind of warmed to it a little bit more over time, and in terms of my use, and I think from a running perspective, I think it actually works pretty well. And in the runs that I've done so far, the fact that it doesn't really massively compromise on the design, I think that was the biggest thing for me. It isn't a really thick watch. It hasn't meant that Huawei's had to make a thicker case to accommodate it. It's still a little bit heavier than some of the other Huawei watch cases, so from a running perspective, maybe you notice it a little bit more. But ultimately, in terms of how it's managed to store away those buds without really looking like there's earbuds in here, it's done a very good job. The run tracking experience feels very similar to what I've experienced on the Huawei watch. Maybe it doesn't get the full experience that you're getting in all of Huawei's watches, but I think the core experience feels very similar, and all the kind of new updates that benefit runners is kind of there and represented in these watches. The thing really comes down to is price, and this is expensive. This is the most expensive Huawei watch that you can buy right now, and if you look at it from that perspective, you could obviously buy a cheaper smartwatch and a pair of truly wireless earbuds with a smaller enough case that you can carry around with you, and ultimately you would get more battery life. You would probably get similar in terms of that audio performance, I think, as well. So it really comes down to, are you willing to pay that amount of money really for that that case and that compartment and that kind of ability to have those earbuds there. As I said, I think the battery life does take a bit of a hit in terms of using the active noise cancellation. That's something that I didn't absolutely love, and obviously the battery life is less than what you get on other Huawei watches as well. So yeah, I think it's a lot to pay for, I think, a very clever design, a design that doesn't really show itself, and Huawei's shown that they've managed to do it in a very elegant and discreet way. I think for me, from a runner's perspective, I think it's a lot of money to pay, and I would ultimately probably buy a cheaper watch that offers a strong running watch experience. You can get a cheaper Huawei watch that offers similar experience, and then pick up some earbuds that I think can give you maybe not the better than sound quality that you're getting on these earbuds in here, but I think ultimately very good experience. You're going to get ANC, you're going to get bigger battery life, I think, ultimately, and less of a drain, and you're going to get a case that you can particularly kind of probably store away as well with no issues really in a running belt or in your pocket. So it really comes down to if you want that all-in-one design. I think Huawei has shown it's executed it in a very good way. It just really comes down to if it was a little bit cheaper, maybe closer to what the other Huawei watch prices come in at, then maybe there's more of an argument here. But obviously you're paying for two devices here, two very good devices, I think. Would I spend that money on it? Probably not. I think if it was a little bit less, I think I may be a little bit more easily swayed. But yeah, plenty more testing doing it, whether, seeing whether those buds are going to stay put, whether they're going to still deliver that sound over time, whether they're going to stay secure in that case. There's not, we're not going to see any kind of wear or issues with that case over longer testing. And hopefully, it can show that it can justify paying that extra amount of money. So yeah, it's been so good so far. I've actually quite enjoyed using it. Having those earbuds easy at hand, where sometimes I'm always kind of scrambling around. They're there, and the battery life generally has been good enough for me as well. So yeah, those are my kind of initial thoughts, my runner's perspective on the Huawei Watch Buds. Okay, so there you have it. Those are our initial thoughts on the Huawei Watch Buds. Now, if you've got any questions about this watch while we're testing, do let us know in the comments. As always, like and subscribe. Hit that little bell to find out about our latest videos. And yeah, we'll see you in the next Run Testers video.